First of all, introducing our challenger.
Out of the blue corner.
He's going to step in and he does. It's all over.
Let's bring on the boom.
This is Eternal MMA.
Mixed martial arts fans, welcome back. This is Eternal Insiders, and this is a brand new segment coming to you now with a guest joining me on today's show. Talk a little bit about all things combat sports in the Eternal world, talking about things like what fights are sort of being going on, fights ahead, and just sort of generally what's sort of going on in the combat sports world for Australia. So without further ado, you know who I am. You've seen my mug enough times. I'm Luke, of course. And sitting to my left or to my right, depending on which way you're looking at it, I'll let Mr. Daryl Martin introduce himself. Daryl, tell us a little bit about yourself, mate, your involvement in combat sports, and a little bit about what we're doing here today.
Yeah, mate, I've been around for a little bit, I guess, now in the MMA scene. I started back in 1996. Back in the day, they didn't call it MMA. It was called NHB, No Holds Barred, back then. Been going to shows since Kerry Dunn was, he had, what was the show? Spartan, that used to run at Trocaderos, and Chris Hazeman used to run rings at Trocaderos and stuff as well. So I've been around and training forever and sort of always been a big fan of the sport and had a chance to meet some of these guys. I briefly ran a gym up here in Brisbane, and yeah, just combat sports fan, and sort of always been in and around the scene, training in and amongst it. And yeah.
Right on. No, obviously, as you know, it's sort of spoken to Cam like over the last sort of few weeks and months and that sort of thing that, you know, we want to do a sort of a segment like this where we talk about what's going on with the cards, Eternal cards that have been, Eternal cards that are coming up. And we wanted to get someone on the show that had some opinions and sort of knew a bit of his stuff. And here you are, and here's what we're sort of doing. So fantastic to have you on, man. I'm looking forward to doing this with you. So we're going to talk about a few things, including the card that we just had, Eternal 76, of course, the big one. But before we jump into that and get Daryl's thoughts, do want to give a big shout out, of course, to Mr. Steven Erceg, the former flyweight champion for Eternal MMA, making his UFC debut at UFC 289 against David Dvorak, who is probably now the former top 10 flyweight. Coming in on short notice, I think 8 days notice, I think is something what it was for Steven after fighting and defending his title at Eternal 72, I believe it was, back in Perth, coming in there and just absolutely tearing it up. 3-round war with an absolute top-class opponent in David Dvorak. Not only that, not only coming out and getting the unanimous decision win, but also going on and earning massive plaudits, as you saw, David. Daryl, at the top of the Dana White press conference, and giving the 50K performance bonus was absolutely incredible. Great fight. Couldn't be happier for Steven. Just an absolute top-level dude. Loved watching him fighting for Eternal. Definitely one of the better guys we've had represent the brand, and going on to represent the country of Australia over in the UFC is just fantastic to see. So, Daryl, you did get a chance to watch the fight. What were your sort of thoughts on that one?
Yeah, look, to be honest, he earned every bit of that 50K. To go over there, have no real tape on the guy, not have a camp where you can specifically prepare for that type of fighter. Go all 3 rounds, looked good in all 3 rounds. We saw stand-up, we saw ground. He displayed it all. It's, look, it really showcased that ability of Australian MMA fighters at that level. Like, he's come straight out of Eternal, straight into a top 10 fighter. And it's kind of, you know, it's a good thing to happen for Australian MMA to show we're at that level now. We've got guys on the local scene who can enter that level. And like I said, there is guys who could enter into the UFC that are in Australia, but to enter a top 10 guy in a division that's stacked and to do as well as he did, it's a massive calling card for Australia to say, hey, we're at that level.
100%. And you just don't see that very often. Like, you know, even some of the guys you've had coming in, I think one of the only people that comes to mind for me that sort of comes straight in from somewhere else to go straight into like a top 10 opponent and then not even onto a title shot was Yuri Prochazka. But you got to keep in mind with someone like Yuri Prochazka, who had like a million fights outside of the UFC, was massive sort of fighting in Europe. And then it's really Steven Erceg to come straight into a top 10. As you said, speaks volumes about what we're doing here in Australia, specifically with Eternal MMA and the guys who are going over there and doing their thing. Like, this is the spot to be. You know, if you want that exposure, you want to get those reps in, you want to shine on the biggest stage, like Eternal MMA is where it's at. And, you know, Steven is definitely the shining example of that. And he made everyone proud. The performance he put on, as you said, against a guy that he didn't know sort of too much about. and the skill set he brought, just absolutely incredible to see.
And the thing is, he looked good everywhere. He didn't look out of place anywhere in that fight. Like he didn't, in the transitions, in the stand up, on the ground, he looked like he belonged in every aspect of that fight. There wasn't a bit where, he's having to stick to this part of the game because he can't hang here.
Not at all.
But he could hang across the board, which is, I'd like to see what they're going to give him next. Like it's an interesting place to be because you're not going to get that sort of warm up to get to the top 10. You just beat a top 10 guy. Yeah. They're not going to start putting you, back to the back of the line to fight the other guys. It's sort of only forward from here, which is, don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic place to be, but that is a stacked division. Straight into the top 10. It's straight trial by fire, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, with how sort of far that flyweight division's come, like over the years, like you go back to when Henry Cejudo supposedly saved the division from sort of being put on the shelf by Dana White, and the sort of the murderers row, they got sort of in that top 10 now, like just sort of straight in there. But I mean, he's good to go, man. He's said it since his last couple of fights that he could sort of slot straight in there. Almost sort of a blessing in disguise that Clayton Carpenter fight fell through that he originally sort of had slated. Because that one sort of fell through and he goes straight into the top 10 and he's getting the absolute rub. Instagram numbers for him going through the roof and all that sort of thing. So cool to see. I'm curious to actually get your thoughts. How did you sort of score the card? I thought that he lost the first round and then got the second two. I was interested to see if the judge gave him all 3 rounds.
Yeah, look, that judge, it'd be interesting to find out if he's from Australia, and God bless him for giving it to him too. That's, very, very generous of him, and hopefully there's more judging like that for us in the future. But look, I probably think the first round was fairly even, and probably I scored it for the other guy, if I'm being honest, hand on heart, if I had to give it to someone. But look, the other 2 rounds he made the adjustments he needed to make. And like I said, he showed good fight IQ. He looked good out there. And like I said, it's a really good moment for Australian MMA for a guy to walk into the top 10 in a killer division and hang. It's a great moment for Australian MMA, for Eternal MMA, to show that, hey, we're, you know what I mean? Our champions aren't paper champions. You know what I mean? It's because there's guys with padded records around the country, around everywhere. There's guys who've padded the records to get to a certain place.
Yeah, we get none of that. I mean? Yeah, we don't get that from here. Like you see that a lot in sort of countries like, I think Russia's probably a good proponent of that, with guys coming in with 25-0 records, sort of thing. And you sort of look back at who they fought, and then guys are like losing records. You just don't have that with guys coming to Australia, and certainly not Eternal. Like those guys are getting prepared well to sort of go over there and do their thing. It's great to see.
Well, we're not big enough in Australia to sort of duck. Although I think, unfortunately, in Australia, some of that still happens. For some reason, guys are sort of fixated on having this perfect record. They don't want to lose their O. And I'm like, what? Like, I mean, this card, what, Justin Van Heiden on this latest Eternal card, what's he? 12 and 5, yeah, 11 and 5. He's the champ. The what's his name? Quillen. He's 3 and 1. Like, what are you trying to protect this O for? These guys are running around with belts, and you're trying to protect your O. Go and get a belt. Go and take the fights. Go and take the hard fights. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, you see so many guys that are not from this country, but I mean, like other guys like from other countries, like that. Like most of them are coming in with like a loss or 2 in the record at some point in their career. Like, but look, sort of way down the bottom there. Like it's not a lot of guys are coming in with an O next to their record these days. You know what I mean? So it's not boxing. It's not detrimental. You can come in with those couple of losses. As you just mentioned, of course, Justin Van Heerden, he's knocking on the doorstep. Got his losses sort of out of the way early. You know, a couple of losses he actually did have on his record. Fought outside of his division. It's not detrimental to what you want to do going forward. Certainly not anymore. Yeah,
look, I've sort of, like I said, I've been around the MMA scene for a long time and helped with other promotions and stuff. And it always is interesting when, you know, I've heard coaches or other people sort of not so much outwardly say, but sort of look for a easier fight than probably their fighter needs. And I guess the problem with it is, what are you going to do? You're going to pad him until eventually he's got to fight someone good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's only so long you can pad it for until now you do that. And eventually you've got to fight these good guys. And if you get blown away because you've been fighting guys who aren't progressively harder, but put those wins on the record and make your record look good. Don't worry, that record will look good. But if you get blown off the park and you're already up in that championship territory, again, they're not sending you back to fight the hobbyists. If you fight for a belt or you fight in that sort of top 5,
you're there.
well, now you're going to have to fight other tough guys.
Yeah, 100%.
That you should have fought on your way up.
Yep.
But now you're going to have to fight them and on your fall back down. So don't worry about the O. Don't try to protect some magic thing. Like you said, you nailed it. This isn't boxing. No one gives a fuck about the 0. What we care about is, like Quillan, turn up, heaps of shit talked about him, didn't deserve the fight, 3-1 isn't a record yet, and this guy's at home with a belt on the mantelpiece. Where's your belt? Where's your belt? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Take the opportunities that are given to you. He took that opportunity with both hands. The guy's got a belt. He deserved that fight. Got the fight.
And that's the thing too. And that was offered to other guys. I don't necessarily know who, but that was offered, or at least sort of spoken to about with other fighters, as far as who was going to face Blake Donnelly for that title. And speaking to Quillan today, like, I sort of asked him, and it will come out on the pod, and he just said he wanted it. Like, he knows he's got to go through the best guys. He wants to fight the best guys, and he was just the one that said, I'm taking this fight. Like, it's, to your point, as you said, like, the losses don't matter at this stage. Certainly not at that sort of age that they're sort of at. So it's crazy to see. It's not crazy to see. It's fantastic to see what these guys are doing. Yeah, and look, Blake's no slouch. Blake's a tough guy. Right. He completely dismantled David Martinez, and in a great performance. Twice. He's done it twice now with David Martinez. Yep.
Great performance. Great way to get the belt. And I could imagine guys wouldn't have been lining up to fight that guy. But like I said, Quillan took his chance, and here he is. Here he is, sitting on top of the show, sitting on top of the lightweight division. We'll get into that because that was the second, that was our co-main event on the Eternal card. So we'll get into Eternal 76 now. I mean, what an absolute crack of a card that was, man. I mean, we talked about it before even coming on the show. Speaking to Cam O'Neill, the man at the top of Eternal MMA, he said himself that he can't remember a card we just had. I mean, we've had a lot of great Eternal cards over recent months, but I mean, the amount of finishes that we got treated to, and early finishes, round 1 stoppages, round 1 knockouts, round 1 submissions. I mean, quite frankly, made my job a little bit easier as far as talking about some of this stuff, because you only got to watch like 40 seconds worth of tape for some of these fights. Like, absolutely incredible. Obviously, at the top of the card, Justin Van Heerden defeating Rod Costa, defending his Eternal featherweight belt for the first time against Rod as the bantamweight champion, moving up in weight, fighting each other for the second time. Of course, going back, Rod did get that nod in the same fashion that Justin got the job done here, knocking out Justin in the first fight. Justin getting the redemption and defending his belt, knocking out Rod in that second round, and hell of a knockout, so clean. You'll be able to talk about this. Like, Justin looked good. I actually said to Justin today, he looked different compared to some of his fights gone by. And in his 2022 season that he had, where he won the 2022 Fighter of the Year, he looked good there. But this was different movement. It was a solid game plan. The stance switching, the feints, like working off the jab, the teep kicks, and everything. Just everything about his movement and just his demeanor in the cage. He looked like a world beater, and he proved it by defending that belt against one of the better guys we've got in the country, in Rod Costa. Yeah, look, his composure is what got me in there. He looked, for a guy who he already had a knockout loss against, he looked composed, looked good. He was setting things up. He was checking distance. Like, the first round wasn't super exciting. It was both guys sort of feeling out each other. And look, to be fair, look, hand on heart, I'll put my hand up. I thought Diego was going to beat Justin. I was wrong. I thought Rod Costa was going to beat Justin. I was wrong. Justin's just a different fighter. I had the chance to train with Justin when he was fighting out of Arena, fighting out of Southside MMA. And look, he's a very strong kid for his size. He's got plenty of cardio. He'll probably at some stage hang shit on me, because he got me to, I gave up on top. He just ran me out. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I couldn't breathe anymore. He just ran me through the gears, just too much cardio. And yeah, I was done. I couldn't breathe anymore. I was out of there. But look, I'd seen him fight. I never thought he was going to reach the levels he had. I thought he'd sort of hit that ceiling. But look, he moved teams and proved me wrong, and keeps proving me wrong. And I'm happy to be wrong. He, what a great fight. Like I said, looked good on his feet. Really gauged that distance, didn't overcommit to anything, saw him sort of trying to get Rod to bite on those feints. Once he felt like he had him moving the way he wanted to, just, yeah, this beautiful overhand, right on the button, got the job done.
Yeah, so I watched the fight back a little bit again today, and even just some of the different, camera angles that were treated to it in terms of the knockout, and just even the way that he sort of slightly set up, that right that he caught him with, just ever so slightly, just a little sort of tiny feint in there. It was almost as if he might have been going to sort of throw a jab, and then just straight over the top with the right, and Rod never saw it coming. As I said to Justin today, a couple of people talking in the comments about early stoppage and all this sort of nonsense. That was not an early stoppage. Like, Rod went out after, I think, that second punch that Justin threw to him with the ground and pound strikes. Rod's eyes went to the back of his head. And as Justin said today, he thinks the third punch that he gave him on the ground sort of woke him up a little bit, but that fight was done, man. Like, that was over, 100%.
100%. Anybody who doesn't think that was a good stoppage wants to see people die.
I don't know if that was joking or not, but this is what I was reading. Early stoppage. What are you talking about, bro? The fuck?
Yeah, look, someone buy those people a guide dog. That's just dumb shit to say. I don't know. That's looking for things to say in the comment. I agree. I agree with what Justin said. Like, watching that fight, and I've watched it back a few times, I think that last punch woke him up. He looked pretty done, and then that last shot sort of woke him back from where he was.
Yeah.
But I was super happy with the stoppage. But to your point, he had been sort of fainting, and I think he got that read on him.
Yeah.
And he fainted, and I think he saw, like, just at the end of the first round, there was a couple of times where he didn't bite on that feint. And I think he was seeing it like, oh, okay, he's just fainting me. He's just trying to get me to bite.
Yeah.
Well, this time it wasn't the feint. This time it was a real thing. And I guess these are the things he's learning, these level changes, these distance management, all these things that he's doing, which looks so much different now. And when he's in there, the composure that he shows is amazing. Like I said, Diego, Rod Costa, these guys both had wins over him, both really good wins over him. And for him to come back and dominate both fights as he did,
yep,
it's good signs for him on the way up.
No, absolutely incredible. And it's going to be really cool to sort of see what comes next for him. I mean, Justin sort of really rides that fine line of being like humble, but also, he knows what he's sort of doing, that sort of thing at the same time. Sort of not ever sort of one to kind of bite on, too much as far as what's sort of going to be next to him. I know Blake Richardson, the in-ring announcer, sort of, talked about the rumors have been going to the UFC and that sort of thing. And he sort of chuckled it off on that sort of thing and said, yeah, we could do that. But also fight in the car the night before. Like, and speaking to Cam and Ben about this, he's one of the few guys sort of around that just says yes to anything. Like, any fight that's put in front of him, yep, I'm a guy. And got to be said as well, same for Rod Costa. Like, all respect to Rod Costa. I know he's going to be feeling it now. But I mean, he's a guy that just says yes to everything as well. So, seeing those two guys go out and put it on, and Justin get up and going on to what sort of he has next, really cool to see. Like, do you foreshadow anything what might be next for Justin? He's talked about, obviously the UFC being potential. Would you like to see him maybe have one more fight, say an Eternal?
Yeah, look.
What are you thinking?
Look, he's, like I said, Justin's good. He's looking really good. He's in a good stable. He's seeing the best guys. He's, his level certainly has risen. Is he UFC ready? I don't know. I still think he's probably a little bit undercooked for that. I'd like to see him fight at least once or twice in Australia before he sort of goes over there. Like, I'm not saying he couldn't do it now. I'm just saying that I think it's a little undercooked. Like, maybe the Abdullah fight. I think he called Abdullah at the end of that fight. I'd like to see that fight. Abdullah, he's looked great in his last couple of fights. I saw he had a match announced, but then I'm hearing through the grapevine that he's pulled out of that match or something. Is that a thing, or
something strange that, like a couple of hours after it was announced that it was cancelled, something like that. So he's available through strange circumstances, depending on what you sort of believe, that pulled out due to some advice or anything like that. Not too sure what's sort of going on there. I mean, Abdullah, for all intents and purposes, looked fantastic in the fights that he's had. Fought guys like Josh Kuhn, of course, Diego Pereira and that sort of thing, and looked good doing it too. Obviously it's still fairly green and still a lot of growth and that sort of thing. But when he's looked good, like, he's looked good. You know what I mean? So, like, he's available. Justin called for him. Justin did say today that he is aware that he did pull out of that fight, but he thinks that he'd be a natural opponent anyway, given his record, given these sort of wins of sort of recently. So, I mean, hey, like,
I like it. I think it's the right fight. Like, I think, look, the champ knows his name. The champ called his name. He's available. I mean, it sort of writes itself, yeah, whether this is by design, whether it's by accident, because like it's a super strange situation. You get a fight, you sign for a fight, the fight gets announced, and then you pull out of it hours later.
Mm.
It's a super bizarre situation. Like, I don't know whether it's, he could be injured. Do you know what I mean? It could be an injury. But to take a fight when you're injured, I don't know. Like, it seems super bizarre. But look, by whatever design or by, however it happened, they're both available. And look, Justin comes through that fight in flying colours. Let's talk about the move on. But I'd like to see him have one or two more.
I mean, selfishly, like having Justin around, I'd like to see him like do one more. I mean, if you want to talk about it from like an earning it perspective, I mean, what 5-fight winning streak that he's sort of been on, he's been there, he's sort of done that. The improvements that he's sort of making, it's almost a what sort of left for him at this sort of stage, I think. Of course, obviously the Abdallah fight, if that's there, if that's a fight they want to make, again, hey, sign me up. I'll watch that sort of every day of the week. So, if it's say the Sydney card or whether it's the UFC, maybe it's Dana White's Contender Series. Looking forward to what comes next for Justin. Absolutely. Good things couldn't happen to a better bloke. You're seeing the improvements in his game. You said you've trained with him. I mean, training with a guy like Alexander Volkanovski, and you're seeing little tiny bits, not necessarily massive traits or anything like that, but just little things in his game that you can tell that he's working with Alexander Volkanovski, obviously Joe Lopez, his coach, and just, he's used to sort of range and that sort of thing that we saw in this fight.
The only thing with Justin, and look, they've spoken about it. So just to make my point here. So if you look at Justin's losses, so he's been knocked out a few times. Now, there's a potential here that those knockouts are a product of genetics. So if you look at his facial structure, he actually has quite a small jaw, quite a small pointy jaw. It reminds me of Cro Cop's face. And if you've ever heard Joe Rogan talk about it, saying he doesn't have a very square, robust jaw, and having that slimmer jaw, they feel like this is an old boxing adage that with those smaller, slimmer line jaws, you're easier to get knocked out. Now, he's had a couple of knockout losses. He does have that face shape, that Cro Cop sort of slimline jaw. Does he have a jaw that's more susceptible to that? Look, he got hit a few times in the Pereira fight, and Diego hit hard. But that Abdallah fight, Abdallah hits hard. He's long, he's rangy. You're going to get hit. You're going to have to get hit to get inside to do the work you want to do. I'd like to see it. I think, put those kind of concerns at rest. I'm not saying he's got a glass chin. I'm just saying he's had a few knockout losses. He does have that facial structure that they talk about in boxing and in MMA that might be more prone to that. So I'd like to see him fight someone who really pushes that, puts some hands on face, puts some hands on chin, and see if it holds up. See if his overall camp, strength and conditioning, everything that he's doing is making a difference down there. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I mean, hey, Justin called him out and said, hey, Abdallah, if you want to get your head caved in, come and see me. So I'm sure it does go both ways, certainly. So watch this space. We'll see what happens next for one Justin Lockjaw Van Heerden. Now moving down the card. Of course, we had two title fights on this card for Eternal 76. Blake Donnelly putting his lightweight championship on the line against a young Quillan Soul Killed, who came out absolutely smelling like roses. As we talked about, a guy that was sort of had his doubters coming into the fight, given his young professional record, came out and got the job done inside a minute. I think one point that sort of some people might be missing there is Quillan Soul Killed came into this fight, or came into his professional career with 11 amateur fights. So he's no stranger to the cage. He's had his reps. He's earned his way. He's not come in and putting in 2, 3, 4 amateur fights and then coming in and trying to blaze through his pro record. He's got experience inside the cage. So even from a young age guy, he's got experience in there, and I think that certainly showed in that fight. And came away as a new lightweight champion.
Yeah, look, like I said before, there was a bit of shit talk basically around him getting a title shot, and people didn't believe that he should have got that shot. But like I said before, you take the opportunities that are put in front of you. He took the opportunity. He's got the belt. Look, I'm a notorious shit talker. I will talk shit to anyone about anyone. But you also got to put your hand up when you're wrong and say, and for all those guys who did shit talk him, who did say, you guys should all put up your hand and go, you know what? That's the champ. I was wrong. He deserved it. He turned up. He grew an extra set of nuts, and you know what I mean? He went out there and performed. He went out there and, you know what I mean, put on, an amazing performance to get a win like that. And that shot that he hit him with, that first shot, was audible on the stream. Like, it was that
It
hard.
happened so quick. I thought it was a left because you know how he followed with that left? Because he
With
cracked
the
him
hook, yeah.
right and then he followed him with the left. I thought
Yeah.
when that first happened, I thought that was the one that put him down. I thought he missed. And even after watching the replay, I was like, oh, shit, he shoveled him with the left. That's what's put him down. Then you watch it again. You're like, oh, no, he caught him first there, right?
Yeah.
So quick. I mean, he was looking for that early in the fight. As you go back and watch it, and I mean, both those guys kind of swung hard. I mean, there was one in his left hook that he threw at Blake's head that Blake just sort of ducked out of the way. I'm like, shit. It's like,
Well, I think there at one stage, Quillen almost threw himself over off balance, throwing a
I
punch.
think that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I think Donnelly, when he goes back and has a look at that, and look, don't get me wrong, he's the champ. He's a good fighter. You've got to back yourself in. You've got to back your skills. But when a guy comes out like that, and I think Quillen was burning off a bit of nervous energy, like when you throw a punch that almost throws you over, you've got a bit of nervous energy there. You're throwing for you're pegging for the cheap seats. I think Donnelly kind of turned it into a 50-50 fight. Like when you stand in the pocket and stand around guys that are chucking leather like that, you're sort of taking yourself out of having the advantage. And now whoever hits first, who's the first guy to land a bomb? And Quillen was the first guy to land the bomb and put you down. I would have liked to seen Donnelly sort of make that adjustment, see, hey, this guy's got a lot of nervous energy. Like he's throwing heavy leather straight off the bat. We've got plenty of rounds in this fight to win it. It's a championship fight. Maybe just get a bit of distance management. Maybe let him throw those, wear himself out, take a bit of speed, take a bit of power off those punches, and, pick up rounds in the later rounds. You get a bit more of a look at him where he sort of engaged straight off the bat, never really got the read on him. And unfortunately, unfortunately for Donnelly, he copped that right, followed by the left.
No, he absolutely did. I think actually Quillen said that he swung that left and he just missed it. But I mean, the right had done enough damage and then sort of jumped on him with the ground and pound. It was sort of very, reminiscent, but almost foreshadowing the main event because it sort of happened in very sort of similar fashion, the way we were sort of treated to both those fights. But I mean, for Blake Donnelly himself, Blake himself too, absolute cracking guy. Still a tremendous young fighter, still a big career ahead of him. He'll absolutely be back. Some of the performances that he's had, prior to this, the only loss that he had on his record was against Dim Skillies. Has a loss now in a championship fight to an up and coming Quillen Soulkilled. So, for both those guys, still plenty of traction that they've got ahead of them. As we said at the top of the show, losses at this point in your career, like it's fairly sort of elementary. You dust yourself off and you get back in there. Blake himself seems to be in good spirits today. Probably not as great spirits as what Quillen's in. Riding that big mustache that he's got going on there. Looked absolutely phenomenal there. I think you said he grew an extra set of balls. I think that's where it was. And the mustache at the top there looked absolutely fantastic. I think he's been having for a couple of fights. So it looks like a man now. An absolute tremendous home crowd support for Quillen Soulkilled. That Perth crowd was just absolutely rocking. I don't know if you've been to necessarily any of these events over in Perth. One and only event I've been to was in Perth, and holy shit, the crowd over there is just phenomenal. Like, absolutely.
Yeah, I've never been to a Perth card, but I'm going to have to go. They were all about it. The entire cards, even during the prelims, they were losing their biscuits.
They show up straight away, like immediately from the get go. Like, I'm not saying that's weird or anything like that, but I don't think that happens at every event. But the one I went to for Perth at the start of the year before that UFC event, you get there and they line up straight away, like before the first fight, and they're all in there like good to go. Like, absolutely love it over there in Perth. I haven't been to the Gold Coast or anything like that, but if you're sort of looking through the lens of what you can sort of see on TV, like Perth is where it's at for those fights. The HBF Stadium, fantastic, good venue too.
Yeah, look, they certainly like a hometown favourite, and they really got behind Quillen. They really pumped him up, and I think that was a part of it too. Like I said, he came out with a bit of that nervous energy to burn, and he wanted to put on a show in front of the crowd. And look at what better show to put on than to walk away with the belt, right?
100%. Yeah, it'd be very cool to sort of see what comes next for him. He sort of said today as well that he's looking to put a few fights in on this scene, wants to defend that belt. So he's definitely hungry to keep proving himself. So watch that space on Quillen Soulkilled. Moves to 4-1 as the lightweight champion. Absolute cracking performance that he sort of put on there in front of the hometown crowd of Perth. They're absolutely going 8 points.
Who do you think? Well, sorry, where do you think Donnelly goes? What do you think they do with Donnelly now? Because, like I said, good fighter, intelligent fighter. He's got the skills. Probably didn't implement the best game plan here, probably something to go back and have a look at and learn from, and something he'll approach differently in the future, which is a good learning experience. But again, you beat David Martinez a couple of times. You're at the top of the heap. You lose to Quillen. What do you think?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to sort of see what comes out of that, and the sort of the return that Blake sort of, depending on the timeline where he wants to come back. I mean, he looked, after he sort of come back from that knockout, I mean, he looked like he was pretty fresh. I think I saw on his Instagram he was in a gym today, like, getting, I don't know if anything like that, but he was at a gym over there in Perth. So, I mean, he's looking good. So be interesting to see.
Good sign.
I mean, maybe we see what happens as far as not necessarily saying that he matches Martinez again, because he already fought him twice, but I can't remember who Martinez is fighting again for that. Who's he going up against?
Joblin?
Yeah, so maybe we see what sort of comes out of that. I know when he was the champ, and he was sort of looking at guys that he could potentially fight. I mean, who knows what's going on with, say, Jack Becker or anything like that, still to come back from that massive injury that he had. Let's see. Obviously, we've got a lot of up-and-coming guys. The lightweight division in Australia absolutely cooking at the moment, so infinite amount of possibilities for Blake, but no doubt he'll be back for sure.
Definitely.
Any thoughts yourself?
Man, look, like I said, it's a tough one. You were the champ. Again, you're not going to go back to fighting hobbyists. There's, you know what I mean? It's only tough fights, but he's got the skills to do it. Honestly, I just think it was not the best idea for him to stand there. And I think he'll probably look back at that and say, yeah, standing there with a guy throwing them like that is probably wasn't the best idea. But like, it's okay for me to sit on it and be an armchair athlete in 2020 hindsight, you know what I mean? 2020 vision in hindsight, and say, I would have, you would have, she would have. I'm just saying, though, from an outside perspective, I think looking back in at the way the fight started, it probably would have been in his best interest to maybe have a bit of a longer look at him, allow him to burn off some of that energy and engage him later on in the rounds.
I mean, the plus side for Blake, I mean, he's a very introspective person. He does sort of take a lot of time to not only sort of think about what he's sort of doing in his career, learning from his mistakes. He's also the type of guy that really just sort of thinks about, you can tell a lot about the way a guy talks, thinks about a lot about what he's sort of saying. You can tell when he's sort of saying about past experiences that he's had, like his loss against Dim Skillies and that sort of thing, that it's always fresh in his mind. He knows what's gone wrong. He knows what he needs to sort of change. So I've got no doubt that he's definitely the type of guy that's going to come back, like just guns blazing, just go get it back. Like, he'll correct the things that he needs to do, as what you've sort of touched on in terms of what you think he needs to correct. I've no doubt that he's the type of guy that'll sort of do that. So again, definitely looking forward to what comes next for Blake Donnelly. He'll be back. Of course, Quillen Solkill capturing the lightweight title, 4-1 now as a professional. So we'll see what happens with that Martinez and Joblin fight. Watch that space as far as what could potentially be set up from then going forward. What else did we have? Third fight of the top of the card. We had Alden Bates versus Stewie Dare. Now, I know you had some thoughts on this fight. Alden Bates coming out looking absolutely as jacked as ever, looking almost as big as I'm looking. Alden Bates, he's getting there. Looked fantastic. Had that fight back in the February card against John Vake. Went the distance. He was out of time last night. He had somewhere to be, and he got it done in the first round. Just absolutely swinging bombs. Dealt with a little bit of adversity in that sort of first round, as long as it lasted with Stewie Dare with the grappling, that sort of thing. Managed to get back to the feet and just absolutely swing bombs on him, and that's pretty much all was written for Stewie Dare there.
Yeah, look, Bates looked good, didn't he? Like, I mean, he gave a shout out to his strength and conditioning team. Now, I don't know if that's a new addition to his team, whether it's a new place he's doing his strength and conditioning at, but man,
if it is, I'd like to know how recent that was, because I mean, he's looked friggin' massive for like ever, like huge.
But he just looked, he's always looks big, but he just looked like the shape that he was in and the hardness. He looked, he was ready to go. Look, him and Stewie Dare got into it early. There was a lot of, again, a bit of nervous energy there. There was a lot of sort of swinging and missed shots and stuff to begin with, but they eventually settled down and got into it. Bit of a shame for Stewie Dare to go out like that. He's been a fixture of Australian MMA for some time. And look, to be honest, Stewart's a better fighter than that. He just is a better fighter than that. We didn't see the best of him on that night. And look, I think it's the right time to retire for him. Like, he's just, I don't know whether he's got other personal commitments, whatever he's doing, but that's not the Stewie Dare that I'm used to seeing fight. And I'm not taking anything away from Bates. I'm just saying a vintage Stu Dare doesn't look like the Stu Dare that turned up there on Saturday night and fought. And I'm glad that he hung him up. I think once you aren't fully in, you should hop out.
100%. I mean, that's the Dana White sentiment, right? Like, you know, when you're thinking about retiring, that you should retire. Look, and I'm not going to talk on that. I'm not a mixed martial artist. I'm not a combat sports athlete. You know, it kind of, when you hear people, I mean, you're an educated person on the subject and that sort of thing. You know, when you sort of look at someone who's thinking about retiring, that it's sort of time to retire. And, you know, for him to sort of done it when he's done it, I mean, you know, he sort of had a sort of a mid-record sort of career that he sort of had. But I mean, he's sort of been there and done it all and seen all. You know much more about Stewie Dare than I have, but a good moment for him, obviously not in terms of result of the fight, but to be able to sort of hang him up in the cage and sort of go out in his own terms. But I mean, all credit to Weldon Bates, like just coming out, just absolutely guns blazing. What we said, maybe a little bit of controversy in terms of the refereeing in that particular fight. A little bit of controversy refereeing pretty much right sort of through the card. That we might sort of touch on a little bit there, but yeah, look, maybe could have been stopped a little bit earlier. But yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, there was a bit of there's a couple of points of refereeing on the night, and I guess this is the thing, like when you're refereeing, and I don't want to say at this level like it's the UFC, but it's still, you're on a card, it's being played on Fight Pass, all that type of stuff. If you're going to stop a fight, wave your arms like you're trying to wave down a passerby for a car accident or something. Just like the commentators were confused, I was confused. You're like, it was. Are you saying it was an illegal shot? Did you stop the fight? What happened here? The commentators were asking, "Is this, you know, is it over?" I wasn't sure. You know, it's sort of like, hey, and when a guy's covered up like that and taking shots like that, you got to be right on top of the action. You got to be right there, because one shot too many is one shot too many. Do you know what I mean?
And can you, I'm not too sure if you can give any sort of insight into this, but, you know, through talking to guys like, you know, Cam O'Neill and that sort of thing, and you know, his opinion is there just needs to be more, I guess, education and training, you know, with those sort of things, you know, with refs in WA and all that sort of stuff. And look, again, it's one of those things I'm going to say, look, I'm glad I'm not the one in there sort of doing that job and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, this is fighter health on the line. You want that sort of decisiveness and that sort of thing too. What do you sort of have knowledge on in terms of the accessibility they have in terms of where they can get their education? Like what can be sort of done in terms of getting that sort of going forward, you know, up to
I don't know heaps about the scene in WA. I'll be honest, I don't. But in terms of locally out here in Queensland, where I am, the referees that we see here that do the eternal cards and stuff, they do multiple cards. Do you know what I mean? There's so many cards. They're always refereeing cards. So they get more real life practice. Like, it's okay, 100%. You should be given more training. They should get an opportunity to hone their skills, but nothing beats the practicality of actually being in there. You know what I mean? Sure. And here in Queensland, there's so many cards: Sunshine Coast, Mackay, Far North Queensland, you know what I mean? Gold Coast, Brisbane, wherever, there's always a card running. These guys, Peter Hickmott and his crew, shout out to Pete. For me, Pete's the best ref in the country. I very rarely, if ever, see Pete get it wrong. All those guys that are out here in Queensland, I think, have really progressed, and it's very rare now that you see them out of place, which is what happened a couple of times over there in WA. Referees just got themselves out of place. It's not something they per se did deliberately or something that, it's just they weren't close enough. I think in the Kappa fight, Wes Kappa?
Yep. Which one?
Wes Kappa, I think Bruin copped one after the bell. And again, it's just being that extra step or two away that doesn't allow you to, when the time's called, to get in the middle. And that one step away cost Bruin a shot to the liver or a body shot of some description, which Bruin took 2 steps and dropped afterwards.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And that's the sort of thing. And again, can't say it enough times, I'm not going to pretend to be a ref in there or anything like that, but I mean, you get the notification, right? You know, 10 seconds to sort of go on that sort of thing. You'd be thinking that the ref is just sort of right there, getting himself ready in position. I imagine that's something they'd be drilled on. When you hear that clap, you'd be ready in position, good to go. And like you said in that Kappa fight, and we'll talk about the Kappa fight in a second. We've got a few things to talk about there, but I mean, it was unfortunate, you know, for his opponent, John Bruin, that he took that shot after the bell sort of happened. That does happen every now and again, but it did unfortunately just look like the ref just wasn't quite in that position to sort of ready to go. And ultimately that's, you carry that over in the fight. You know as well as anyone, you're carrying over a liver shot into another round, you're not feeling good. 100% no.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You just have to be in the right space. You have to be in the right place. And look, it's a hard job. No one's going to say it's an easy job. Every time, no matter what you do, someone's going to dislike what you did. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those thankless jobs where everybody hates on the ref, But in this particular case, it was just out of position. Maybe just doesn't have the experience. Maybe just hasn't reffed enough fights to know where to be. Because I understand, like, Bates was throwing heavy leather, getting close enough to stop it, and also making sure you don't cop a stray one. Like, I'd imagine when you're there, because I've never refereed anything. So, like, let me just say straight away, never done it. So, but I'd imagine when you're in there and big guys like that are hucking leather at each other, there's a certain distance you have to be, because if one of those stray ones come down, Stu Dare swings one from out of the pocket to try and get out of the bad position he's in. You don't want to wear that. You know what I mean? You don't want to wear that. But at the same time, your job is there to protect the fighters. And the last thing we want to see is a fighter get hurt or someone cop more damage than they need to cop. We're here to protect the fighters, both now and their future. We don't want to see guys cop additional damage, which in the future hurts them or their career.
No, you hit that nail on the head there, man. Obviously, fighter safety is paramount. Take nothing away from Eldon Bates. Stellar performance for him. 2-fight win streak for him now. Moves on to weight and 3. Guy that holds a win over Jack Della Maddalena, of course, former champion for Eternal MMA himself, over there in the UFC now. So can't wait to see what's next for Eldon Bates. He's starting to get on in his career. He's starting to get a bit older now with 36, 37 years age, something like that. Looks like he's 29, absolutely chiseled. Could probably do this for another 15, 20 years if he wanted to. Sort of in a.
Man, he looked strong. He looked fit.
Good to go.
Look, whoever's fighting him next, good luck.
Yeah.
I would suggest a good game plan. And I would imagine matching strength for strength might not be that game plan. He's a big, strong, athletic kid. So, I'm keen to see sort of if he has moved to this new strength and conditioning camp, and it is sort of keeping him at that upper echelon, keeping his fitness, his strength, his mobility, all those types of things that you need to be able to be successful in your later years as a fighter, because he's been around for a minute too, Aiden. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like he's a spring chicken and he went out there and performed. And it's if this is a new part of his game plan, I'd like to see him do it again in the next camp.
No, can't wait to see what comes next for Eldon. Big post-fight shout-outs and speech and everything he gave. Always loves a bit of a chat, does Eldon Bates. He's got the Perth crowd behind him. Of course, he's an English bloke, but lives in Perth, trains in Perth. Everyone there loves him. I think he was talking about potentially wanting to get a title shot sometime in the future. So I put my hands up for an Eldon Bates title shot somewhere in the future there too. So let's see what comes next for Eldon Bates. But as we just touched on before, the Wes Kappa, John Bruin fight, a little bit of controversy there in terms of the refereeing at the end of that round. We had a little bit of a talk on Messenger last night in terms of you were sort of saying, like, I'm not too sure who this Wes Kappa bloke is. I had no idea who Wes Kappa was myself. I'm personally not familiar with him. I've done a little bit of research on him now. Combat sports legend. Wish I knew more about him. Professional boxer with, I think, a 25-5-0 record, a 25-5-1 record. A guy that's apparently trained with Floyd Mayweather over in the famous doghouse or dog pen or whatever it is, Floyd Mayweather boxing over in Las Vegas. Certainly done the rounds. I think he's quoted himself as being a combat sports slut. His words, not mine. What an absolute treat to see Wes Kappa in the cage for the first time. First fight that he's had as a mixed martial artist, the first mixed martial arts fight that he's had in 14 years. Came in, gave an absolute cracking performance, stuffed a lot of the takedowns from his opponent and John Bruin, worked the body. You can talk more about this because, I know you're sort of in and around the boxing night sort of thing. But I mean, he looked like, just that kind of old school boxers, working the body jabs and that sort of thing. Was going to the body late in the second round. Loved his post-fight speech, everything about it. It was the Wes Kappa show.
Look, I'd go and watch Wes Kappa mow his lawn. Honestly, I think the guy's that much fun.
Yeah.
And look, Cam, if you're listening, book the guy a fight next week. Like, honestly, I would watch him every other weekend, fight whoever you want to fight. Let's just get people off the street and get Wes to fight him. I don't care. Like, that guy's fun. The post-fight speech was fun. He's fun in general. The guy can fight. I think he's had a scrappy. Is he scrappy? Was he there with?
He had a scrappy? I don't think I caught that detail. I'll check that. You could be right. I'm not too sure.
I'm pretty sure I saw Ben Vickers in the corner because at one stage, Bruin was framing up a DAS, and I think I could see Ben Vickers desperately chucking instructions into the ring of how to navigate it.
No, I didn't catch that note, but very potentially. I mean, again, I'm a bit dirty myself not knowing more about where's Kappa coming to the fight. Me and my very sheltered Victorian country Victoria life over here, not knowing about the WA legend that is Wes Kappa, but hell of a performance. Got a corner stoppage win at the end of the round 2. Like we talked about before, there was that little bit of say controversy. I mean, he would have been throwing the shots anyway. I think he still would have landed that strike. The ref just didn't quite get there in time. But I mean, he dropped John Bruin right there at the end of the round. You sort of see just before the camera moves away that John just hits the deck. He felt it immediately. Had to carry that into the second round. Now, apparently, it was a corner stoppage due to, from what we know from the commentary team, that it was something to do with a leg injury. Maybe more to come on that as far as what happened there. But it was the corner that did stop that fight, giving Wes Kappa that TKO victory.
Yeah, look, Bruin did the right thing. When he came out, it actually reminded me a little bit of the Randy Couture, James Tooney fight, if you've ever seen that. James Tooney, world champion boxer, came to the UFC and he fought Randy Couture. Randy Couture did a low ankle pick right off the bat, got as low as he could, well out of the range of those hands and ankle picked. And look, Bruin did the right thing. That it was reminiscent to that. He got that low ankle pick on him early, took him down. Look, I won't lie, I was a bit concerned. The half guard wasn't a stellar half guard from Wes Kappa. It wasn't a high-level jiu-jitsu. But I think what he's done is not so much focus on jiu-jitsu as much as he's focused on defensive jiu-jitsu. Yes. And that's what we saw.
Yep.
Building up from the bottom,
yep.
Keeping himself out of trouble, not so much getting bogged down in keeping half guard or keeping quarter guard or doing any of these things. Bruin stepped through to the mount fairly easily. It was wide open. That concerned me. I was like, okay, this is, you know what I mean? There could be a big skill disparity here.
Looked bad early. Yeah.
It did, but he's a very, very cagey character. And in terms of defensive, not letting himself get it, because like I said, there was rear naked choke attempts, there was DAS attempts, there was, you know what I mean? But he did a very, very good job of getting up, keeping himself out of trouble. And then when he was on the feet, those are heavy hands. He didn't just hunt the head, he worked the body. And I think probably the plan was work the body, get the hands to come down and eventually come over the top with one of those hard shots. And look, the guy hits hard. The damage was evident. That shot, that last shot in the end of the first round, it's classic body shot, and it worked exactly the way as you quite often see it. It hit him. He took 2 steps. That first breath you attempt to take after a body shot, your body just, it like cramps and it won't let you breathe. And that's when we saw him go to the knee.
Do you know what it's like to feel a body shot in terms of getting shot in the liver like that?
Unfortunately, yeah, I'm not good enough to not get hit. So yeah, I cop them every so often. So
I was just curious to hear from people that do know what it sort of feels like. Like, you know, I mean, I've never sort of taken one, you know, doing junior karate growing up for 10 years. Never really sort of got myself in that much trouble. But yeah, it's such a funny thing. I shouldn't say funny. It's not funny for the people it's sort of happening to, but you see that split sort of second or that second or two kind of delay where you get hit and then the body just sort of shuts off. Apparently, can't feel too good.
Yeah, look, I think most people will say like a shot to the head, within reason, you can clean it out. You might get a little bit of the honeycomb or the stars or whatever when you cop a heavy shot. But that body shot, it just sticks with you. It's why they say it's money in the bank. You know what I mean? When they're hitting the body, it's money in the bank, money in the bank. And yeah, it's just it's a feeling you can't describe. And it quite often is. You cop that shot. It's not until you sort of take that first breath after the shot that it really clamps down. And yeah, it's an awful feeling. And yeah, I'd prefer to get hit in the face than hit in the liver. It's a feeling that nobody wants.
I've heard that consistently, that, yeah, you'd rather sort of get hit in the face rather than sort of copying that and just sort of feeling it right sort of through the body. So you're definitely the first person I've heard that from. I don't want to personally feel any, and I'm probably not in any danger of that sort of happening to me anytime soon. That's why I'm sitting here behind the camera. I'm not the one in the cage. But yeah, the left hook to the liver, I mean, very Nicky Holtzkin-esque. I'm a big Nicky Holtzkin fan, kickboxer. Loves a left hook for the liver. It's probably my favorite technique that I see in martial arts or any kind of mixed martial arts or any martial arts for that matter. Recall him fighting against one Elliot Compton, dropping with the liver shot, one of the one fight championship cards going back about 12 months ago, and you just sort of see it hit and it just looks absolutely paralyzing. So absolutely big shout out to Wes Kappa with that shot. Got the
and look, Bruin's good. Bruin's a good fighter. Like that was a dangerous fight. That is a tough fight when you haven't fought MMA for, was it 14 years? Is that what it was?
14 years. And like you said before, the way you absolutely hit the nail on the head in terms of the way he was sort of able to get back to his feet when Bruin sort of took him down early in that fight. And all I'm sort of thinking, all I kind of know about Wes Capper, he's a guy that hasn't had a fight in mixed martial arts in 14 years. He's a professional boxer. He looks like he's a kind of a boxer. And as soon as it goes to the ground, you sort of think, is he going to drown here? Is he just not kind of, is he just sort of going to be, how do I kind of get up from this? Got himself against the cage, got himself back up, stuffed all the takedowns going into the second round. One of my personal favorite moments, and I'm sure you like this one as well, when he sort of got away from one of those takedowns, or maybe I think Bruin was trying to ankle pick him, and he did that little jog off across the cage, and the crowd.
Well, yeah, he got away from one, fell over.
Yeah.
Bruin went after him and went again. He sort of fell over, got away, and did the little jog around the.
Yeah. I mean, and look, I'm being impartial during these fights. Like, I'm not going for anyone. I'm not wanting anyone to win or lose and that sort of thing. Like, I want to see some good stuff, But I mean, when he did that little run off, I'm like, I gotta go. Crowd's loving it. Top moment.
Look, he's a good character. Like, I mean, he talks well. He's a good character. He's got, like I said, he was in that fight. Like, he wasn't trying to, I guess, not engage. He'd been taken down a few times. I think he was overmatched on the ground. Very cagey, very good in terms of keeping himself out of submissions and keeping himself out of trouble. But at no stage did he really decide, okay, I'm going to stay on the outside and I really am worried about these takedowns, so I'm going to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stay away from the, the back of the cage, or, he had his back to the cage. He fought in the middle of the cage. He fought on the front foot, the back foot. He's good to watch. And Cam, get him on the next show.
Cam, absolutely get him on the next show. You said it at the start of the conversation about Wes Capper, and we're saying it right at the end. Let's get him back. He's clearly a fan favorite. I think that his stock just goes up from there. We definitely want to see him back on an Eternal card sometime soon. Absolutely can't wait for that. Very interesting to see who he fights. I mean, he was calling out champions left, right, and center. He wants to put on a show, so let's go with that one. Last couple of fights we had in terms of the main card, obviously we had a stellar amount of prelims sort of go down as well. But a couple of those sort of fights, we had Toby Meach defeating Jamie Renouf, sub due to a guillotine. Interesting talking point with that one there. Renouf, coming in as supposedly the superior grappler. Renouf saying himself believing he was the more prolific grappler there. Did shoot him for a takedown on Toby Meach. Toby Meach just jumped straight on a guillotine. Another first round finish. Looked at, I shouldn't say really sort of looked incredibly. He was sort of fending off most of the takedowns for as long as the fight lasted, but got the job done in a spectacular fashion there, Toby Meach.
We'll get to that. It just reminded me we have to circle back just to the start of that of the Wes Capper fight.
That would be
the alarm going off.
I literally just looked. That was right there in the notes to talk about. How did the alarm go off my head? Did you know?
I just literally looked down at my notes and I was like,
the alarm.
"Oh, hey, wait a second."
When did you know it was going on when that first happened? Like, is it? I think I said in that little chat, I thought it was like some kind of, as Blake sort of announced.
I thought it was the alarm. I thought it was I thought the alarm was walkout music, like a remnants of the walkout music.
That's what I thought.
And it wasn't until it all went quiet and it was still there. I was like, are they going to have to evacuate the whole thing? Like, are these guys going to have to fight outside on the roundabout? Like, how's this going to work?
I mean, yeah, well, let's see. Let's get a camera out there and see how that goes. I was curious. I was like, crowd. I'm like, is anyone moving? And because I was watching my wife, and I said, that's a fire alarm. Like, are they supposed to be going? Like all credit to whoever was dealing with that. Through I'm sure Cam jumped on. I'm sure they had guys there trying to find out what it was. I don't know what the actual issue ended up sort of being, but I mean, they obviously got on top of it. Fight got delayed there a little bit, but that's my first time in seeing anything like that. A fire alarm going off at HBF Stadium, delaying the start of a fight. As the fighters are going back, they're feeling cagey. They got that nervous energy. I mean, that's just what you want when you're about to start a fist fight, is just alarms, air raid sirens going off in your ears before a fist fight. Yeah,
well, I guess both of them were probably thinking to themselves, like, hey, we've all heard fire alarm before. We know what the next thing is. Evacuate. You know what I mean? Like, where does this go? Like, I could imagine it did, to a point, play into their mentality. They've come out, they've warmed up in the back room. Now they're standing out here. There's a potential they're going to have to evacuate. Are they not going to get this fight? Is the fight going to go ahead? Are they going to have to evacuate and come back? Is there actually a fire? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I saw Cam disappear from cage side very quickly. I think he was running around making sure that there wasn't a fire and making sure there was no need for evacuation.
Maybe he was the first to evacuate. Maybe Cam just ran. Maybe Cam just left. I don't know.
He's Scottish. He's Scottish. I don't think they run from anything, do they?
They don't run from anything. We can check with him. We'll get him on the show to either deny or not deny at some point. But no, I'm sure Cam's all over these things. He's got his head screwed on. He's known for putting out fires, both probably literally and figuratively. So I'm
But
sure
that was a brand new one for me.
brand new one.
Yeah, I've been around for a little while, and I can't remember a fire alarm stopping a fight.
No, I mean, I think the only other thing that I can even think as far as, and it happened the next day, actually, at the UFC was a guardrail broke as people were trying to watch a fighter come in and a whole bunch of people dropped from the crowd down, a couple of minor injuries and that sort of thing. But yeah, the funny things that happen at combat sports, but thank God everyone was okay. Obviously, there was no fires or anything like that. Well, I mean, to my knowledge, it wasn't a fire, maybe just a false alarm. But the show went on ultimately. Prior to that, we had George Mangos getting the job done in round one.
Well, I think we skipped. Did we skip Meach then accidentally? I think we skipped Meach accidentally.
Oh, no,
I think we didn't go.
we were going back to we circled back from the alarms, but yeah, we had Toby Meach, we had George Mangos getting their wins. Toby Meach, as I said before, getting the job done in round one, took the takedown pretty much straight away from Renouf, blocked up that guillotine choke straight away, and that was 99. Hung on to it, ended up in full mount, I think, from memory.
It was yeah. I think he actually tapped before he went over to full mount. Yeah, he did. Yep. That's what it looked like. It looked super tight. Like when it went on, it looked real tight. And I think there was a perceived notion that Renouf was going to be better on the ground.
Mm.
But Meach certainly, I guess got the better of that exchange. And look, anyone can end up in a bad position, but Meach certainly capitalized on it. And yeah, good job from him.
I mean, do you see that happen too often? I mean, you see a lot of guys, especially at a higher level, they go to get a takedown and they look to want to, lock onto the neck, and it's almost as of a desperation type thing that is going, I'm going to throw up a choke. But, at the higher level, most guys will sort of step over. They'll sort of get out of that trouble. I mean, it didn't look like a fantastic shot from memory from Renouf. It sort of, even Meach sort of sink it in. Like it didn't look like, it didn't look like a black belt style kind of like lock up like straight away. He just kind of grabbed hold of it, sunk it in, and like you said, it got deep pretty much immediately. Renouf tapped straight away. Fight sort of rolled over, got to the mount, and finished it off. So, big props to Toby Meach for getting that job done there. When, as you said, he was the guy coming in that supposedly didn't have the higher grappling acumen, but comes out with the win looking good.
Well, there's a difference between MMA grappling and BJJ. Do you know what I mean? Like BJJ, and even more so these days when you go into like no-gi grappling and stuff like that, it's sort of transforming into its own individual sport. But some people can't make a transfer, if that makes sense. Like some guys are really, really good in the sport of BJJ and the rules that surround the sport of BJJ and no-gi grappling. But in MMA, it doesn't transfer. You can't do the same things. You can't butt scoot. You can't stay on your back for extended periods of time trying to throw your legs up for arm bars, omoplatas, triangles. Look, all those things work. I'm not saying they don't work. But in MMA, if you're on your back, you're probably losing the round. If you're on your back, you're probably taking punishment. And it's a place where I don't think you want to spend too much time if possible. Now, I think that Meach is Meach from Scrappy. Was Meach from Scrappy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think he was. And I think Ben Vickers does a really good job with the boys over there in terms of, and look, there's lots of good places in Australia that are doing what I call MMA BJJ, like BJJ for MMA, not just gone are the days where you can go and do BJJ, go and do some kickboxing, and then turn up to a fight and just blend it all together. That's not a thing anymore. That kind of hobbyist game's gone. Training 2-3 nights a week and turning up to a fight, that's gone. If you're not training 5 nights a week, even just in the Australian scene, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage to fight the guys who are. And the guys who are training MMA 4 or 5 nights a week. Do you know what I mean? And
But it's why you don't see specialists go far these days, right? Like, and you don't really sort of have specialists too much these days anymore. Like, you don't just have a guy like, you got guys like Damian Meyer and that sort of thing, just, jiu-jitsu specialists. You've got to be so well-rounded in every facet. To your point, training 5 nights a week, training MMA, it's not just being an absolute specialist kickboxer or a specialist wrestler or anything like that. You've got to have it all. And especially that kind of that wrestling base, as you said, mixed martial arts, wrestling and grappling, such a big thing that you need these days for sure.
And it's just so different. It's just so different to the sport of grappling, to the sport of BJJ. MMA is a completely different animal, and you actually have to get in there and do that. And you can't expect the skills to transfer one for one. Does that make sense? Like what you do in your sport and then you take it to MMA, it's not necessarily rather going to transfer at level. When you go over there and punches are going, guys are kneeing you, guys don't necessarily want to pass your guard. They're happy to stay in guard. They're happy to stay in half guard. They're happy just to lock your leg down and just throw punches, just rack up the points. Get 1, 2, 3 rounds up, whatever the round number is. They're happy to do that. They're not trying to pass. They're not trying to go for elaborate submissions. They're not trying to get points through advancing position. Do you know what I mean? And I think some of the BJJ guys get caught up in that because they've done that BJJ. They're happy to accept the bottom position too much. And when that guy's not providing openings by trying to pass or trying to go for submissions, well, that opening isn't there anymore and punches are now there. It's a different game and you really, really have to. And I'm not saying, either of these guys aren't up to date, but I'm just saying, when people say, oh, this guy's got a higher level of BJJ, I always think to myself, well, higher level in the sport of BJJ or higher level in MMA, because they're two different levels of grappling.
No, fantastic insight there, Daryl. Absolutely right. You're the subject matter on these sort of things. So, but you're absolutely correct. Mixed martial arts in terms of grappling, it's such a different thing. We see that with, guys like, Islam Makhachev, we know with his sort of grappling, that sort of thing, just like wiping out guys that are just pretty much BJJ sort of specialists, that sort of thing. So the evolution is definitely needed there. So Toby Meach moves on to 5-2. We'll wait and see what happens for Toby Meach out of Scrappy MMA. We did have a stellar prelim card before that. As I mentioned before, I accidentally moved past the Toby Meach fight. We had George Mangos, the 19-year-old, looking absolutely fantastic, getting the job done in round 1 by the rear naked choke. Look crisp, like the striking, everything that he was putting on for as long as it lasted, and just how he sort of sunk in that choke at the end there too. I mean, he looked like a professional that had 7, 8, 9, 10 fights. He didn't look like a guy that just climbed to 2-0. As a 19-year-old, look good.
19, that level of composure, look, when he moved to the back, I don't know if everyone saw it on the stream, but he went straight to that body triangle. It was tight. Yep. It was just so natural for him. The movement was natural. He looked good on his feet. Like I said, super composed. He was out of Lions Dens, which is Luke Pizzuti. If you don't know Luke Pizzuti, he's harked back to a long time ago. He had a promotion called CFC, which saw Hector Lombard compete on it. I believe Rob Whittaker fought on that as well. He's run Lions Den for a long time. Him himself fought MMA. He fought Pancrase. These days, he looks like he's fighting a few meat pies, but he's not in fight shape anymore, old Luke. But nonetheless, he's putting out some good fighters. And, man, that George is one to watch. He's what a he's already 1-0, but this is really a breakout performance. To do what he did and as confidently as he did it and look the way he did, fantastic.
No, he looked like the real deal. Even coming from Cam's mouth himself. Said that he absolutely looks like the real deal. Said the same about Quillan Solkill, early in his career. But yeah, George Mangos, in terms of guys to watch, definitely ones to watch. I mean, there's a couple of guys coming up that I really like. Harry Webb, that fought on the recent Eternal card, looked incredible in his professional debut. George Mangos, very excited to see him get in there, and he did not disappoint. And as you said, just wrapped at that triangle sort of straight away, the body triangle. You see a lot of guys, like even guys that sort of, experienced grapplers and that sort of thing, they get these kind of positions, they go through the motions, they look for the body triangles. Like the way he just sunk it in, like just straight away, like jumped on it, like vicious, and the way he was cranking on the neck and everything, like he didn't look like a guy that was 19 years old and sort of feeling out those positions and kind of getting the reps in. Like he just looks so sharp. But credit to his gym. You mentioned Lions Den there. Like they're doing something. There's something in the water down there because he looked the goods. And he's going to be a big problem for a lot of people going forward.
I think his only problem now is who wants to fight that kid.
Yeah.
You're going to have to fight up. You're going to have to fight up. There's nobody going to put up their hand after watching that performance and go, hey, I'm going to have my debut or my 1-on-1 amateur fighting. Oh, I'm not saying that won't happen. That there's guys out there who will take it.
That'll happen.
But I'm just saying there's a fair chance that a guy with a performance like that is probably going to have to fight up. But if I'm being honest, given that performance, how composed he was, I didn't see any deer in headlights. I didn't see a young, inexperienced 19-year-old kid. I saw a very confident, very aggressive, very poised, well-trained kid who went out there, did exactly what he trained to do. And yeah, look, if they have him fight up, I think he can do it.
George Mangos moves to 2-0 as a professional, as a 19-year-old teenager, looking absolutely incredible, looking like a veteran out there and impressing everyone, including the both of us. So he was the first guy to kick off the main card. We'll touch a little bit briefly on the prelims that we had. Like we said, it was just with stoppages sort of left, right, and center. If you've got some sort of thoughts on what you sort of liked out of the prelims, like I said, I was sort of in and out, sort of watched as much as I can. Some guys on there I was incredibly impressed with. I think Rowan Breet, I think, was one of them. I think he was a South African kid.
That's a South African kid who
they said,
I think they said that he spent some time in Kazakhstan. I think that's what I heard. Like, I don't know that.
Might be right. I think I might have caught.
I think I heard on the commentators he spent some time in Kazakhstan or something. But that kid, man, another kid, good composure, very physical kid, super physical. He did a great job. It's Adam Lawrence. Adam Lawrence,
yes.
Adam Lawrence, yeah. So look, that was I don't know what to say. That was a trap. That guy's got an 0-3 record. For all intents and purposes, I don't know Adam Lawrence. I hadn't seen him fight before. When they come out and they said 0-3, I was somewhat dubious, but that was a trap. That, like, I would put a guy against an 0-3 guy and think, is this guy a journeyman? I think I read somewhere he started in 2017. So 2017 to 2023, you've only had 3 fights in 6 years.
Yeah, you're not wondering if he's doing this, is he not doing this? Like,
yeah,
we've got to say it's obviously on the amateur record, but I mean, yeah, like you're 0-3 even as an amateur. You only had a couple of fights in that amount of time. Like, it's got to look like sweet pickings, I guess, for the opponent.
100%. And look, looking from the outside in, 0-3, yeah, look, you would put your fighter in there, but I don't know whether he's changed camps, whether he's changed ideas, whether the guys he fought before were just a lot better, or whether he was just less experienced. But man, he come out there swinging for the cheap seats. Look good, look strong. I'd like to see him fight again, and I want to see him fight another striker. I want to, like, Cam, let's have these striker versus striker. Let's see these young guys bang. Well, not that he's that young of a guy, but let's guys like that. That's a fun fight if you can find someone else.
Guys that want to go out there. But we see this a lot from the prelims. I challenge anyone to go back and look at an Eternal MMA prelim in any kind of recent memory, and they're not absolutely kicking off from fight one. Like, they're just absolutely good to go every time, and they're so well matched. That's the great thing about Eternal MMA. These guys aren't coming out here and being overmatched. Even from an amateur level up to the professional level, these guys are getting the proper reps in. They're seeing the guys they're supposed to see. As we said at the top of the show, the losses on sort of, especially in your amateur career, don't matter. You're going up against guys that you need to sort of get in there and see now, so you're sort of prepared for what sort of comes at that higher level. But just we're treated top to bottom, finishes galore, early finishes. Definitely one of the better cards that we've had in recent memory for sure.
Yeah, look, it was a good card overall, and look, again, a well-matched card. You never want to see a card where people are just getting consistently blown off the park. I mean, if we go back to the top of the card or back to the championship fights, we're talking about Justin, who already had a loss to Rod Costa. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like Rod was coming in there on a wing and a prayer. If anything, he had the mental advantage. He's already got a win over Justin. We had the co-main event, a guy taking his chance 3-1 against the current champion, gets the W. Again, probably went into that fight as an underdog. Everybody not everybody, but a lot of people thought he didn't deserve the shot. So again, it's a shout out to good matchmaking. Nobody wants to see anymore. Back in the day, yeah, we wanted to see that tough man style. People go in there, swing for the fences, and someone get knocked out. These days, the cards are much better. Everyone's got a chance to win. Anyone could have won on the night. The fights went the way they went, but it's a credit to the matchmaking that's going on at Eternal at the moment. We're seeing the right fights take place at the right times.
100%. Shout out to Ben Vickers holding it down over there in Perth, Western Australia. Cam O'Neill doing the whole thing that he does. Those guys just doing it big for Australia. We got a lot to sort of owe those guys for what they give us in terms of the show. The show looks incredible. The production looks incredible. The fights are amazing. We've always got something to look forward to. That card's behind us now. We look now to Eternal 77, David Martinez versus Kieran Joblin. That should be an incredible fight. So lots to look forward to there as we march on towards Sydney, UFC 293, Eternal 78 the night before. It's always going to be fantastic to see a UFC card come in and have an Eternal card there the night before as well, where these guys can go out there and show what they're made of, show that they're ready to go to the next level. And no one gets anyone prepared like Eternal MMA to see these guys put it on where they potentially might go next in the international scene. So let's roll.
Where's the when are they going to Sydney? When does Eternal go to Sydney?
Is it September or something? September 9? Or is it confused? Because I think it's September 10 for us, but September 9 in America every time you look at the cards and you see the dates. But yeah, September. So we've got the Eternal card for Eternal 78. I don't really think we have any fights sort of necessarily booked for that one yet. But yeah, the night before that UFC card, same thing what we did with the Perth card over in February. So you get to go to the show the night before for the Eternal fights, see a bunch of fights there. 12 hours later, go and get up fresh in the morning, go to the UFC card. Nothing better than that.
Yeah, look, and it's fantastic to see Eternal get into Sydney.
First time. I didn't know this. First time they've been to Sydney.
Yeah, well, Suman Mokhtaran, I think is how you say his last name. Suman's been holding it down there with Urban Combat, I think it is. Urban. He's been holding it down there for years and sort of, running cards and stuff in Sydney. And people who are old enough like me to remember, New South Wales has got a very checkered history with MMA. There for a long time, there was a bunch of stupid rules. We had to fight with shin pads and all these kind of dumb rules that they implemented for MMA, which really sort of stopped the progression of MMA in Sydney and in New South Wales as a whole. And people like Suman and stuff has been really good sort of getting that scene, getting fights for the guys down there, sort of building up that scene. And now there's an opportunity for Eternal to go in there, make waves in that market. There's lots of good fighters in Sydney, lots of good gyms down there, and the ability to, even though I am a New South Welshman at heart, I was born there. I live in Queensland now, and I always like that sort of state of origin, back and forth, no matter whether it's football or fighting. I always like the Queensland or the New South Wales fighters visiting each other for a fight. I think that adds a little bit extra to the win. You get the bragging rights of New South Wales or Queensland's a better state.
Sure. I mean, you'll know all about that again. I mean, I'm sitting down in Victoria, just sort of sitting on my hands. Like, we don't have anything like that going on down here. It's just Victoria. Where does Victoria on our own? Like, everyone look at us. So don't have anything like that. We don't get Eternal much sort of down in Melbourne. Apparently the scene down here is a little bit skew-if. So would love to see him sort of come back. But hey, going to Sydney, like you said, it's about time that mixed martial art got proper in New South Wales. Like, a lot of political red tape. They're sort of hampering getting UFC cards and that sort of thing there. But they got a 3-card deal over the next 12 months or something like that, or the next few years, whatever that sort of might be, to see them come in. So should see the level of mixed martial arts as a whole from the grassroots grow from New South Wales. We want to see that grow in every state. Seeing it.
Well, it's always good. I think the sports minister was involved in that. There was
yes, yep,
a whole press release and stuff. Now, when you're getting the sports minister involved, it's always a good sign for the sport. They've been a little bit behind, but they're here now. Like I said, a chance for Eternal to go down there, put on some fights, and yeah, like I said, get into that market, get into that Sydney market. It's a good market, good fighters, and it'd be probably nice for some of the Sydney fighters to actually fight in front of their home crowd, not have to get a flight and cut weight on planes and cut weight in hotel rooms, and go to their gym, their sauna, be around their people. It's, there is a bonus. There is a mental edge to fighting in your hometown, as well as the nerves that come with that as well.
Big time bonus there for those guys. So we absolutely love to see it. We did see Casey O'Neill get announced for that UFC card. So a lot of familiar faces will be in town for that one. Can't wait for that one. Of course, like we said, we've got Eternal 77 coming up at the top of July, and then we move on to Eternal 78 for September. So a lot of good things to look forward to. Daryl, I reckon we'll wrap it up there for the first one there, man. Thank you so much for the tremendous insight. Absolute pleasure to have you on here. We'll do this again soon, and we'll find more things to talk about as it comes on. And we'll do it again.
Sounds good.
Much appreciated, Daryl. Thank you.
All right, man. Check.